Hello guys, Sebastian here. So today, this topic, I want to address the word trust and what brought this into my mind and awareness. I watched this video from the YouTube channel called Mind Shift. It's a really intelligent guy who he was asking the question of why do you trust God? And his video was very enlightening. Appreciated how he addressed the subject. Uh, what prompted this is, what is trust? How do we define it? And do we understand what it means when we say trust? And so his original question of why do you trust God? Seriously, that was the title of the video. And so my growth and my experience in awareness, I have learned that words are very powerful. Words have lots of depth and meaning and history that sometimes I don't think we fully understand when we're using it in common vernacular. So I wanted to make a video that breaks down what trust is. And this discussion will be kind of how I've broken it down in my own mind and kind of getting a better understanding of what it means to trust God and just trust in general. So the concept of trust, the word trust, we have these concepts in our mind, and it's a little bit tricky to unpack because it's a very layered concept, and its meaning, it comes from and depends on the psychological state of the individual or the individuals that are using this concept. So the dictionary has multiple definitions depending on the usage. So I'm going to read here the definitions I have. So noun is the firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, or strength of someone or something. It's very functional. Confidence placed in a person or thing. So this would be like the authorities or professionals, in their respective roles. It could also be a reliance on the integrity, character, or ability of a person or principle. So this is like relationships and friendships and that kind of thing. And then there's this kind of, it's a shift in the trust dynamic, a charge or a duty imposed in faith or confidence on as a condition of some relationship. So if someone has entrusted me with some duty and I have accepted that entrustment, then they have put a trust in me, and then I've agreed to fulfill that to the best of my ability. But it's placed on me by them, by another, or I'm placing that on someone else. I'm entrusting them. And then there's the legal definition, which is not applicable in this discussion, but like an arrangement in which property or assets are held by one party for the benefit of another. And the reason that is called a trust, a family trust or a business trust, is because there is this faith of action, a faith in a response, a faith in procedure. There's all of these things that go into a legal trust. Now we get into the verb form, which is to rely on or place confidence in someone or something, to believe in the reliability or truth of something, to expect confidently or hope, to commit or place something in the care of another, something like secrets or valuables, or to have faith or belief, especially in God. And the Old Norse, it's an Old Norse term that originates from the word traust, Traust. And that word means confidence, protection, support, or firmness, steadfastness, reliability, rootedness, stable, firm, dependable. So now with this definition, you get an idea of what trust is. And so now we can explore the nuances of the word, the rich emotional and cognitive structures beneath that definition. So emotionally, it's the willingness to be vulnerable, letting go of the control, allowing another to hold influence over us and over our lives in some way, over circumstances. And through this trust, we are relinquishing this fear of control, this fear of betrayal. We're putting our faith in someone else or something else. But rationally, it's a calculated expectation, and we base that on our past experiences, our pattern recognition, the perceived integrity of the people or the institution that we are trusting. So it's a there's a vulnerability aspect to it, an emotional aspect, and then there's this rational aspect where there's an expectation of reliability. Those two go hand in hand to build the trust. If you don't have an expectation of reliability, you can still be vulnerable, but there's no trust in that situation. So it's both of those together. Now we need to look at like the psychological aspects, the psychological stages of trust, and how our comprehension of trust changes and expands. It becomes more broad as we understand this concept as we mature. Before we get deep into the psychology, let's look at why we trust. So we there's a saying, we trust because we must. I mean, as an infant, you have no choice, and that we'll get into that. So life is just far too complex and uncertain for us to navigate without leaning on some other person, some other thing beyond ourselves, whether that's people, systems, institutions, our intuition, or someone else's intuition, or ultimately like divine intelligence. So trust simplifies our lives. It simplifies our existence, and it allows our energy to flow. It allows it to flow with life and in life, and not be trapped in this survival consciousness of constantly being suspicious or needing to be vigilant in everything that we do. We trust others to do the things that they are doing, and they trust us to do the things that we're doing. They trust us in our roles, we trust them in their roles, and we sublet that control to someone else. So trust is not an inherent thing. It's not innate in us. Trust arises from our alignment and others' alignment, an alignment of predictability, integrity, and competence. And then in that, mixed in is this empathetic concept. So with the predictability, we're getting consistent outcomes. We can there is we can see it in our mind's eye how things are going to play out. And then integrity as an aspect of that is when our words and our actions align. And so if our words and action align, then people see us with that we have integrity, and that builds into the trust concept. Competence. We have to have a certain competence, an ability to perform that which has been entrusted in us. Like, nobody's going to trust me to do brain surgery, although in my experience with automotive repair and things like that, someone may trust me to do really big mechanical service on their car. So, and I trust myself to do that, but I would not trust myself to do brain surgery on someone. There has to be a competence, for an ability for me to actually perform the duty that is being entrusted in me. And then the empathetic part is we have a sense of care, a sense of shared humanity, so that we're kind of on the same page. Our goals are aligning. And this is how trust grows with all of these. And when all of these concepts align, trust is founded. But if any aspect of that is lacking, let's just say the competence lacking. If you don't, I can trust you in all manner of things and then not trust in your competence in particular things. So that's where it's like trust grows and diminishes based on these four aspects and how well they all align. So trust is not all inclusive. Of course, we can trust someone in one context, but not in another. We're not going to trust the pilot to do brain surgery, and we're not going to trust the brain surgeon to fly us around the world. It's relative. Um, it's conditional. It's contextual with domains of emotion. It's emotional. It's physical. It's moral. It's spiritual. It's practical. And so, in each one of those domains, we're going to assign trust based on the individual we're dealing with or the institution we're dealing with. So it's a gradient. It can be a gradient that expands or contracts based on our own experience and our own self awareness and the experience of others and their own self awareness. And this all happens in stages. It's not like, oh, today I don't know what it is, and tomorrow, oh yeah, I'm all on board with the trust thing. It arises out of maturity, and its meaning deepens as we awaken and and go through awakenings, and the more we become consciously aware of ourselves and our surroundings and of others, the more complex and more nuanced this term of trust get. It becomes more rich. Ask ChatGPT for some synonyms based on the different understandings of trust. And, since trust is a spectrum ranging from the mental side of things, where it's like a reasoned confidence, to emotional safety, and then, as we'll get into later, the spiritual surrender aspects, we start to see that it's a very difficult, nuanced subject. So I'm going to read to you here what I've got in my chat here. So, number one, when trust means confidence or belief. These focus on assurance and faith in reliability. Confidence, faith, belief, conviction, assurance, reliance. Number two, when trust means dependence or reliance. So we had reliance in the first one, but now it's based on dependence or reliance. Dependence, reliance, expectation, certainty, credence. And credence is more formal, often like an intellectual trust. And it gave the example, we rely on our senses to interpret the world. We trust our senses to interpret the world accurately. When trust means entrusting or giving over care, entrustment, commitment, charge, custody, delegation. When trust means moral or emotional security, these are emotional warmth and intimacy. So faithfulness, loyalty, devotion, integrity, confidence, and character. Now, when trust means spiritual surrender, acceptance, allowing, letting go, yielding, alignment, we can see how broad and complex the word trust can get in any particular context. So now the way I've kind of seen this is that you have these layers of human trust, and then you have this divine trust, and there's a very different texture to those aspects. With human trust, it's very pragmatic and relational. We trust others because we can't do or know everything, so we have to trust others to do and know things that we don't or can't do. We depend on cooperation for survival. We're a social species. We are very compartmentalized, so to speak. We learn very specific tasks that we can perform within the social structure, and then we rely on others to do other things, and then it all kind of builds our society in which we all survive and make survival easy. And then we experience evidence of reliability or unreliability. As we experience reliability from others, we trust in that. And all of these are arising within this framework of need and separation. I need you to do something, I'm going to trust you to do it. you need me to do something, you're going to trust me to do it. And then that builds this relationship, but it's transactional in nature. It is shaped by our mutual benefit, um, by our pattern recognitions and our emotional and physical safety. All of these things kind of play into our ability to trust. It's very dynamic. It's always evolving with our individual experiences. Then we get into divine trust, and it's like the there's a shift in how we approach based on different concepts. Doesn't operate from the same logic or the same level of logic. You're transcending this material survival concept of trust. Your uh, awareness and conscious alignment without uh, physical evidence being right there to validate this trust. So it's arising within a framework of deeper inner knowing, this that everything is all part of the same intelligence, an intelligence that is giving rise to everything that we see in life, everyone. And this is the whole new non-duality concept, and we'll kind of get into that. It becomes a participation in life and not protection from it. It just seems that once you get into the divine trust, you've moved outside of the survival nature of our lives. You begin to trust in life itself. It becomes impersonal. It becomes not based on what I need and want and expect, because I can see past that. It's like myself has dissolved. I incorporate myself into the whole, and so I can see a bigger picture, and I'm not so worried about me and what my outcomes are and how I would need to trust to get the outcomes I expect. So it's transcending the human relations of risk and expectation. So this is why trust may not be the best concept to employ when speaking about spiritual matters. This is why we have terms like surrender, faith, alignment, allowing, resting in being. All of these are describing a different level of trust, and so it's kind of transcended the word trust, and now you have to incorporate some other concepts to give it its proper meaning. Divine trust arises from a knowing, a witnessing of the underlying harmony of life and the physical world that we're experiencing. It's like trust in a macro sense. It's like the big picture. When you step back and you look from that big picture view, life is it's so beautiful. It's so expansive. It's so complex. It really is awesomely amazing. And I think we lose sight of that in our human endeavors, in our ego consciousness. We see it, but we don't see it. When you get into divine trust, you see that regularly, and you interact with nature and the outside world from that perspective. And so it changes the way we look at the world. It changes the way we look at others. It changes the way we look at ourselves and how we show up for life. The quality of trust mirrors our level of consciousness. Let's kind of break down the stages of consciousness and of growth, and how that trust is intertwined in our stages of development. So, as babies and toddlers, infants, I'd probably say up to 3, maybe 4 is the later stages of this. Early childhood, So our trust is totally instinctual. It's pre-verbal, it's preconceptual, it's all survival instincts. And then the trust, as we kind of see it, it arises from energetic imprints from our parents and from our caregivers. We're not, as an infant, we're not choosing to trust. It is, trust is embodied in the infant. It is ultimate trust without condition. There was no bargain. The child hasn't thought about trust. It's here, and it's almost like we must trust ourselves to care for the child properly, because the child is literally the one being cared for without any input whatsoever. I mean, yes, it cries when it needs something, when it's hungry, those kind of things. Those are stimuli for us to act, but there's this trust that we entrust ourselves with to care for this being that cannot care for itself. It is, the child is representing this primal openness to life. The child is just being. There is no belief in the child's mind. It's not believing that mom will take care of her or feed her or feed it. It just is. It's just there. And it's almost like when you get into the spiritual realm, it kind of comes back to this first stage. So then in the second stage, let me go back. So in the first stage, if the child is neglected, if it is traumatized, if it has been mistreated in any way, the developing psyche of this child is very likely going to be affected into adult years. How this could manifest, it could manifest in a million different ways, but just a few is anxiety, avoidance. They may be introverted, they may be extroverted. It all depends on how the child processes this neglect or this mistreatment, and what it does to resolve it in itself. But it will shape the way the child matures, and will probably be a sort of scaffolding for future experiences and interactions with others. It's hard to determine how that actually manifests. It's just we have to see that this is such a complex concept. There is no way to be 100% certain how a child's going to mature. Now we can move on to the second stage, where we're past that 3 to 4 year old and we're growing up a little bit. We've become children. We've started to form our own ego. We've realized that there is this separateness. There's me and then there's you, or there's me and there's others. We start to develop relationships. We're having social interactions regularly, beyond our parents and the direct caregivers that were there in infancy. Maybe we even start going to school, to preschool, kindergarten, those kind of things. And we start to learn, we learn to model others. We start understanding consistency, like say with school. You're going every day or every number of days. There becomes a pattern to life. It's rhythmic, and these all build in this certainty and this regularity. We also start seeing approval. We start having our own perceptions of the world. And then that's going to shape those social interactions with others. So as the ego develops, the child will begin to distinguish these different circumstances and start making judgment calls in their own mind, whether to trust someone or not trust someone. If a child is in play school and this other child is always mean or combative in some way, the child will learn to not trust that other child. and probably avoid interactions with them. And if they have to interact with them, they're going to be very protective. They're going to be very guarded. They're going to be more in their survival, more in their protective mindset. And this, I mean, this is like it's conditional experience, and and that conditional experience, it as it happens consistently, we learn to operate from that consistent understanding, and then that level of care, if someone is empathetic or not, if someone is being loving or not. It all shapes how we form our trust bonds with that other person. And of course, the betrayal and the hypocrisy that we start to see as we grow, this fractures our trust in people, in others. I always, me and my wife have talked about this many times, about Santa Claus. How does telling your child that Santa Claus exists and all the stories around Santa Claus, and then for them to ultimately find out it's all just a big make believe story, none of it's real? How does that fracture a child's trust in the parent? On the surface, it just seems like, oh, it's probably not a big deal. But I to me, it seems like it could be a much bigger deal than we give it credit for. And so I think it is important for us to be honest and open, and and do that, act in a way that shows that we care. It's not that we're trying to destroy somebody's illusion, it's that we're not adding to the illusion. If somebody has an illusion or delusion about some particular subject or experience, it's not our job to correct that. I believe it's our job not to get caught up in it and not to attach ourselves to it. We can see it for the illusion that it is and speak our truth, but not do it in a way that's trying to attack or destroy the other person. And I believe that there is a dynamic there that matters. So like when you're teaching your child, you can sit your child down and tell them the story of Christmas and of Santa Claus and all the stories, but you address it as that only. You don't say that Santa Claus is actually going to come to our house and come down the chimney and whatever, even when you don't have a chimney. It blows my mind how this even became a thing, but here we are. So now when we get into the third stage, that's when it starts becoming very relational. It's very rational. And it's also very empathetic. And this is where I think this would probably be more in the pubescent stages and teenage years and even into the early adult years. This could be forming, but we start to associate trust with our relationships, and we begin to understand the psychology of trust in ways, not intellectually understanding like we read a book on it, but we're starting to see how our actions have reactions and how other people's actions have reactions, and we start seeing a more relational picture. We start realizing and recognizing emotional transparency. We recognize honesty. We recognize integrity, and we have mutual respect for others. And so we place more trust in those people that we have mutual respect for. And this is all cultivated through our own self awareness and through the self awareness of others, the empathy that we can transmit and and encompass in our being. There becomes a shared understanding about life and how things are. We start contemplating morals. We have ideas of justice and integrity, and we begin to judge others based on our understanding of those concepts, it's all very intersubjective. It becomes this bridge between learning cooperation with others and also compassion for others. Trust is it's gaining lots of nuance and lots of depth and complexity at this stage. I would say it's like almost in this stage, it would almost like double or triple its concept size and the things that you're including and giving weight to as trustworthiness. So then, and this might be where a lot of people they never really go past this stage. They're always in this stage more or less, and they may peak into the fourth. And if they peak into the fourth stage, they may not go there for whatever reason. They may choose to be in the third stage. It becomes comfortable. It becomes it's very ego driven. It's very ego based. And for someone who is very identified with their ego, they're going to find this stage very comfortable and not see any really need to go further. But the fourth stage is where we get into existential matters, transpersonal, spiritual matters. This doesn't usually happen until people are a little bit older. I mean, I think it can happen in your 20s to a degree. In your 30s, more chances for it to grow and flower. But it seems that you have to reach a level of physical maturity and experience in the world for this to really kind of start pressing itself into your awareness. It requires a certain understanding of complexity and nuance in life. This is where these deeper questions come from. Why am I here? What's my purpose? And these kind of things. So once you reach that level of awareness and consciousness, that's where we start contemplating deeper concepts. We've experienced loss. We've experienced our own surrender in multiple circumstances, whatever that might be. We've found meaning in our life. We've had some awakenings, and all of these are pointing toward a more spiritual realm, a more spiritual aspect of life. The trust shifts from being personal and related to our personal situation, our personal experiences, to something that's more spiritual, more cosmic. It's a bigger awareness, and this can be very people can be very fearful when they get into this stage if they haven't done a certain amount of spiritual work, a certain amount of shadow work, because this really starts unraveling. We begin to unravel our ego. We also start to entertain the idea that we really don't know anything. We don't know, and that can be that deconstruction. It can cause this existential crisis, and this is where the dark night of the soul comes in. It's you could almost say it's the black pill. As we dissolve these illusions, we start to see that life itself is a larger living intelligence. We start to move out of these egoic thought forms. Since we've had experiences of loss, of uncertainty, we've had our certain awakenings, our individual awakenings, whatever that might be. And that leads us to trust in life itself as it unfolds, not impressing our own expectations on how it should unfold. We come to this realization that we can't know everything, we can't do everything, but we can see a wisdom, a deeper intelligence and order that unfolds all around us all the time out of what may appear to be chaos. if we can see that order through the chaos, that's when our mind is expanding to a point where we're seeing that macro picture. We're beginning to see the macro. In this stage, it looks more like an existential surrender. We start to have this confidence in that deeper order, that deeper intelligence, the one that is kind of beyond our mind's limited comprehension of reality. I mean, when I sit out in nature and I'm looking around, it really is amazing at what all is going on all the time. It's like it's difficult to hold all of the things that are going on in your mind just in this small space of awareness. I think, like, if I'm sitting in the forest near my house, let's just say I can perceive a few acres of land, the trees, the land, the air, the birds, the animals. And if I just sit there and listen for all of the different sounds that are going on, all of the different things that are happening, it is almost mind blowing. And it's all interrelated. It's all happening at the same time. It's all happening with and for and around all the other things that are happening. And they're all playing their little roles. And that doesn't even get into the things that we can't hear and that we can't see and that we can't smell. One of the meditative practices that I've done is to sit with my eyes closed and try to hear as many sounds at one time as I can and actually like be aware of the sound. It seems almost impossible to hear all the sounds that there are to hear. So then you add on top of that sight, smell, touch. It's it it is infinite in its ability to give us sensations. So I'd say that this is the stage that most people will never move past. If they reach this stage, this is the stage at where religions and gurus and all these belief systems, that's where they operate. This is where they're trying to get people to, but they don't necessarily want you to move past this stage because this is where they find their edge, their profit margin. They want you to continue in this stage and keep being the seeker because seeking allows them to be the guide. If you're a seeker, they become the guide. That's what a guru is. That's what preachers are. That's what the the elders within churches are. They're all leaders. They're all gurus. They're all the one you look to and trust in to give them the answers. And so that's why I think that most people don't move past that because they get caught in that seeking stage and they have these experiences that allow them to awaken and become more conscious. That just like I was talking about my meditation and my listening and trying to take it all in, it's so much. And so a lot of people just see it as it's too much. And so they find comfort in their seeking and finding the breadcrumbs rather than full realization. And I would probably say that most of my life is spent right now in that stage. But then there's the final stage, the fifth stage. And this is where I'm working on and is part of the goal of this channel to get you and me and as many people as we can into this fifth stage of awareness, this fifth stage of trust. This is the unification stage, the non-dual stage, Christ consciousness, Buddha nature. One can only reach this stage through a sustained practice of awakening, deeper spiritual inquiries, spiritual maturity, this radical openness. And the reason people rarely move into this stage is because it almost requires you to have already begun dissolving your own ego. And that's I would say that's the hardest part of this ultimate awakening is the not necessarily the death of the ego. And I'm kind of opposed to that kind of phraseology because we can't kill the ego, but we can ignore it or we can take it under advisement. The ego is a very important psychological structure that is based on our survival. I don't think it is necessary to kill the ego, but the ego does have to be under a strict control regime. Like it needs to be the slave of the consciousness that is me. I can use that ego in egoic type interactions and use it to my advantage for my survival, but also be aware that I am using my ego. I'm acting, I am wearing a mask to interact with someone who is steeped in ego. If I'm going down to the local government office and I need to deal with government officials, I'm not going in there and with my fully conscious mask on. I'm going in there with my ego mask on, and I'm going in there for a very specific purpose and to serve a specific experience. In this fifth stage, we've already started to dissolve the ego and see the role of the ego and stop acting out of the egoic mind. The reason people rarely get to this stage is because they can't get out of that ego. They even build ego around dissolving the ego. And that's how powerful the ego is. And so that's why I think that if you try to destroy it, you're 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 creating egoic thought forms to try and get past egoic thought forms, and therefore you're just circling yourself back into the trap. So this entire play that we call life is recognized as trustworthy because there is no real separation between me and you or me and the other. It's all arising out of one awareness, one consciousness, and that is God. Now point up because it's higher, but God is not up. God is not there. It's here. It's in this awareness. It's this concept of unification, the inherent wholeness, a nature of self-supporting. And that's where when you actually look at nature, nature is, it's happening. Our human minds do not matter to 99% of what's going on in the world outside of human society and human culture, because we've created our own little world on this earth that animals and nature may interact with, but our world that we have built for our survival is not natural. And nature will never build what we have built. None of that will ever manifest outside of human intelligence and human ingenuity and our own quest for survival and comfort and ease of existence. In this stage, you start to find this peace, a profound peacefulness. It's there regardless of the situation or circumstance. We accept life to unfold as it is unfolding. Eckhart Tolle, I believe he had this statement: "What at this moment is lacking? It's nothing. Everything that needs to be is in this moment. And the only moment we have is now. This is it. There is no future. There is no past. Only now." So trust in this stage becomes being, full self-recognition. It's like the ocean doesn't need to trust in the wave, and the wave does not trust in the ocean. because they are one. This is our realization of non-duality, which is kind of a trigger word for some people. But this is the Christ consciousness. This is the Buddha nature. This is I am God, you are God, we are God, and all that is God. It's all consciousness, it's all awareness. And we are all of this is arising out of the same soup. So as an infant, we're basically embodying trust. There's no choice. There's no thought about it. We are trust. But as adults, we start to negotiate that. There's all these layers to trust, all these details, all of these concepts that that are now brought into the realm of trust. But then as waking beings, we become trust. We are not acting out trust. Trust just is. And it almost puts us back into that infant stage with this much greater awareness and consciousness. So we've come full circle in that respect. And in the Bible, Jesus, he said something to the effect of we must become like children. I think that's where this comes from. We have to become like children. We have to embody trust, even though we have all of the experiences and all of the circumstances and all of these thought forms that are clouding our minds and reality. We have to go back. We have to become like children again. We have to forget all that stuff because it really is. It's illusions of the ego. It's illusions of the self. And it is up to us to break down and deconstruct those illusions. The world is not going to do that for us. It actually requires us to not do that, to exist. And the ego, the collective ego, is in a way hiding this fifth stage from us at every point we can see, because its survival relies on us not reaching this stage. And so they'll put out all of these breadcrumbs, they'll put out all of these concepts, they'll have all of these things that keep you entrapped in the daily goings on, the drama. And if you are attached to that and identified with it, it's very difficult to get outside of it. You almost have to get outside of it so that you can see, whoa, what in the world's going on? It took me many years to do that because it's so easy to get sucked back in. So this is why trust is so hard to grasp. It's constantly evolving as we mature and as our consciousness expands. Moving from a mental concept to spiritual realization. That's like it's such a huge difference. It's almost hard to explain. And hopefully what I'm doing here is helping in some way to explain it as I'm seeing it. So trust isn't something we achieve. It's not a goal to reach. It's kind of something that we uncover. It's something that we realize as we mature. Layer by layer, we build it through love, loss, awakening, all of our experiences. It's this trust is like this little golden thread that's connecting every stage of our becoming, from the innocence of infancy up to our realization of the wisdom of unity and oneness. It goes through all of it. It just gets more complex and more nuanced and more rich, and it really becomes something very different as we move into that spiritual realm, while incorporating all of the egoic type trust, all the human related trust. So when we finally let go of needing to trust, we return to that place that we never left. It's like right here, everything, it's all right here, and we can't see it. When we do see it, it's like, oh my gosh, it's been right here all the time. It's been right in front of my face all the time. I just couldn't see it because I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't looking in the right way. I wasn't ready to see it. So, this whole discussion was born from the question of why to trust God, not if we should trust God. It was why trust Him. I kind of feel like it's a question that it's limiting our response or our understanding by associating trust with God. If I reframe it, I would say like I would ask, why do you believe God is something separate from you that you have to trust? If we're not separate, there is no other to trust. There is no trustee. There is no trustor. And if you have to trust God, it means you still believe that God is somehow somewhere beyond your own being. But when you realize that God is your own source, there's nothing to trust. You are one with God, and you know this. And when you know this, there is no need to trust. Trust comes from a certain uncertainty. Once that uncertainty is gone, there's no need to trust. There is only knowing. So we only talk about trusting God because we still see ourselves as separate. And that is it's that's kind of the trap. A mature awakened soul doesn't trust in God, but are moving and acting and being aware as God. And that changes everything. It changes how we interact with everybody and everything on levels you can't even fathom until you've reached that level of awareness and understanding. And even when you reach that level of awareness and understanding, you then see how much there is to that still could be known. We realize that we really don't know anything, nothing. It's such a small amount of knowledge that we hold in our brains. Is it in our brains? I don't think it's in our brains, but the level of the amount of information we can access at any point in time is so minuscule, even with all our supercomputers and quantum computers and AI and all of this stuff. AI only knows what humans know. It doesn't know anything more. It can't know anything more. It maybe can compute things and help us to be aware and know, but AI itself does not know. It's only computations, it's only ones and zeros. So trust isn't something you give to God. Trust is what remains when the mind stops resisting what God already is, which is this moment, this breath, this awareness, and this moment, and this moment. That is where God is. That is where we exist. So the real question isn't why to trust God, because this assumes separateness. The question would really be, why don't you trust yourself as the living expression of God? And if we're asking it from that perspective, I think it will shift how we see God, how we see awareness, how we see our consciousness, and how we see this flowering of life happening all around us all the time at every moment, and that this beautiful dream that is this life is just a blink of an eye, can end at any moment for any number of reasons. And if we can find meaning and purpose, love, compassion, if we can live from these concepts, we will embody that very trust. We are being trustworthy because we are expressing and showing up with a level of integrity, honesty, justice that is giving reverence to the reality of this experience, that we are God manifesting through an individual perception of this experience, and so is everything else. So I hope that this has helped you understand what trust means in this context. And if this question is posed to you, maybe it can help you explain to others. You can point them to this video. And I would enjoy to hear your comments and any questions you might have. If you wanted any clarifications on any topic, just let me know in the comments, and I'll do my best to respond either in the comments or maybe even with another video if it warrants it. But I'm going to leave it here for now. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye for now.